I was
None of
going to
them.
ask you about that because I wanted to, what I've heard just from people I've talked to is about this stuff in the military is that Putin actually has been very helpful and interested in exposing a lot of what happened with Uranium One that America doesn't even talk about. I mean, they act like it never happened. But from what I've heard, Putin has met with, that Putin and Trump really are at this point fighting the same enemy as and a lot of people say that G is also that this a lot of this is a show and that a lot of the people that we're looking at and people are pointing at they're playing kind of a part but that Trump and and Putin have a similar goal and the same enemy right now and when we call it the invisible enemy it's basically the same people you're talking about from Russia and everything which is the I like to say that it all goes back to the International Bank of Settlements, but to that same those bankers that finance all this stuff that are so above us all, So in what I've been hearing is it's for multiple reasons, but that this hunt for Red October concept where it was like the whole 2016 thing and the Russia Gate was really to force us, America, into a war with Russia to benefit the international banking cabal, and that they both knew it. Is that? Do you see that when you look at that, like politics from that angle?
Well, yeah, I think that you inevitably converge on those conclusions exactly, and I think that I also tend to agree with you that a lot of what we're observing now is a show. Because they can't play open cards. Like Donald Trump can't play open cards and tell you what it's all about. Vladimir Putin can't either. Neither can Xi Jinping. But I think it seems to me from just observing, reading the situation between the lines, it seems to me that they have all understood who the enemy is, and the enemy is incredibly insidious because they are capable of infiltrating a country, even if they get thrown out. Like Andrew Jackson threw them out in 1832. They crawl right back in through 10,000 channels and take over. And so you throw if Vladimir Putin threw them out of Russia, or at least put them in check, well, they can wait him out because they work multi-generational. So
Right. People
has
in
to
America
have.
don't, I'm sorry to interrupt, but people in America don't know that he kicked out the Rothschild central bankers and they're not allowed to do business anymore in Russia as he did the Gates Foundation. I mean, I think that these world leaders that are all being pitted against each other in our different media really I believe it happened in Japan at the G20. I'm not sure that whatever that meeting was in Japan about a year ago, but I think that all these guys decided like, okay, it's all of our sovereignty and our national, culture and religion and language and history, or we're ceding. One of us falls, we all these main people, they all fall. And I feel like unbeknownst and certainly not welcomed by what I call the banking cabal, an invisible enemy, they are fighting against them. That's what I keep saying to people. I don't really think our election has any consequence if we're willing to lose our country over it, because this isn't about Trump. And Trump is really, I feel like you're saying, they don't report that Putin kicked out the cabal, the banking cabal here. I don't know why, but they don't. But thank you, because I wanted to hear that from somebody who actually knows. Great.
Well, I think we have to kind of connect the dots because it isn't served up. A lot of this history and a lot of what's actually going on is being deliberately concealed. But it seems to me by reading between the lines that I think that at least people in U.S. administration who are loyal to Donald Trump understand the game and understand who the enemy is. And you can see that in a lot of, uh, the mainstream media won't serve this up. But if you listen carefully to Donald Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum, his speech to the UN, certain of his statements, measures, and so forth, it does seem that there's a little bit of method to the madness. But like he can't come right out like John F. Kennedy did, attack them frontally, because he puts them all on notice. And the network is incredibly powerful because it's the banking cabal, it's the large military industrial corporations who have the interest, it's the big pharma, it's the big media. And if he antagonizes them, takes them head on, they will just close ranks and destroy him. So he kind of has to choose his battles and then pick them. Like I think he managed to take over the FBI, and but they're everywhere, and
Right.
it's a long struggle.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that inevitably he has to work with the Russians and the Chinese. He
Right.
has to, because
Right.
they are all at the they're all targets of this same cabal.
I think the main point you mentioned is this invisible enemy is multi-generational. People cannot wrap their head around the long-term plans. All they see is that we have a political thing that goes every 4 years, and they can't even imagine that these cabals have generations of plans going on and on and on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's at least 200 years that they've given themselves the project of actually just taking the world over with the franchise of with the central banking franchise. And this is who we're dealing with, whether we're looking at the Nagorno-Karabakh and the Armenia and Azerbaijan, whether we're looking at the COVID-19, whether we're looking at U.S. elections and Antifa and BLM and all of this stuff, George Soros, they're all their agents. They're all their agents. So I think that this is the main enemy, and I think that they've been facing serious headwinds, because I think that they've been definitely cultivating China as their new host, because they've pretty much depleted the United States, militarily and economically. They need a new host. They built up China because if you look at the trading abuse that China has been able to get away with, and in that sense, Donald Trump is right. China has been able to do what no other nation would be allowed to do by, debasing their currency so they could outcompete everybody else. So suddenly all the manufacturing jobs move to China. You wouldn't be able to do this unless you got the cover from very high on up, meaning higher than sovereign leaders in democratic nations.
Right.
And
Right.
so they built up China to be their next host. It seems that it isn't quite working out the way they thought. So, then maybe they need to force a change in China, orchestrate a war against China, or
Right.
something.
I'm not sure. A lot of the aggression is strange, but I'm not positive that G is who we think he is, because I
Yeah,
got a lot of information about what happened about a year ago in Japan, and I think all these guys feel like they were all played, like everyone was played. There are two factions. People don't realize. I think America doesn't think like as globally as a lot of foreign countries maybe do, and it's a lot of people don't realize there's two factions also in China. There's the good people who want to help their people, and there's the deep state, or as we call them here or there where you are, and it's all the same people. I've been telling people for so long, the Trilateral Commission, this Council of Foreign Relations, all the think tanks, all them, Bill Gates, Eric Schmidt, these people have been investing in China for 20 years. I
yeah,
keep telling people, look at the UN. I mean, the most important agencies at the UN are now run by Chinese nationals. And that's why I'm grateful that Putin has given Trump a lot. I feel like he's given Trump quite a bit of information on Uranium One. But I think it's for the best of everyone. And we're seeing these rogue ships from China. Like, it's not making sense. It seems like there's factions fighting against each other in China, and because of they're communist and they're not getting the news out, that we're not seeing that. But to think that our election is about America at this point and not about like the free world as a whole is just very naive. And we're not getting that news here. That's why listening to you, I feel like, oh, thank God. Like somebody's saying like what's obviously the truth, but people want to argue about, you know, who's the bigger racist or who's going to cheat in the election or who's going to cede office or war games. And I'm thinking, it doesn't matter if we lose. I mean, clearly, they're going to cede our sovereignty if Biden and Harris win. And it's already done. They already are bought and paid for by China and Ukraine, and we know it. But America's fighting over nonsense and who's right and who's wrong and who's bad and who's good. And it's like, wake up. This is a planet, and it's either for all free people, we the people of the planet, or, you know, all of our countries are going to disappear and everyone's going to say what happened while we all sit in smart cities wondering.
Hey, Nancy, let's go to Nancy also eventually if Charlie and the Truthzilla crew want to jump in too, because I know that you guys have been listening for a while.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating. I think that all of this is all distractions with what's going on. But I do believe, like someone said to me today, I really don't like the choices, Biden or Trump, but I do believe that Trump is the least of our problems compared to if Biden wins because of his connection with China. I mean, lots of people have problems with Trump for some reason. But I think that you really have to look at, is he the least of the two evils? And I think he is, just because he doesn't have that whole Hunter issue and the Chinese thing. But there's a bigger thing going on. And I'm totally amazed that people don't see the truth. And I wonder why. Like, is it because they can't handle the truth? I mean, I know that most people are educated no matter what. So is it all these distractions? Is it the media?
They don't want to.
People, because they don't want to. But that's a problem, because then we're all going to fall.
Well, I think that it's deliberately made very difficult. You know, the United States has been very, very heavily propagandized and manipulated for decades, because it's the leading power, and they don't want the democratic process to be in their way, right? So, like, they want resources. They go to Iraq, but they don't tell you we're going there for oil. Only Trump told you that. He used to tell you that you're going there for food. So it's, like, it's
Alex, we're losing you. I think.
But I think he's right, because Trump tells the truth. I mean, people may not like that, to hear that. But if I had to believe Joe Biden or Trump, I'm going with Trump. He may be rough on the edges, but he's protecting us in so many ways. Like, someone interviewed him and said, "But who's your enemy?" And he says, "You wouldn't even know who my enemy is."
Interesting.
He said they're people you've never heard of. That's what he said, and that's the truth. But we've heard of them. Unfortunately, our country, it doesn't. I don't know if it's apathy or it's not wanting to believe that everything that they've been told is not true. But yeah, I mean, it's what we're talking about. But
Truthzilla, you want to jump in on this?
One of the things I was just going to say is, like, Alex, I really appreciate your perspective. We're in quite a little echo chamber here over on the North American continent here. And what are your thoughts? Like, just as of 6-7 months ago, it was all of a sudden this quickening of all these agendas that you talked about. Like what shifted, what changed, what made them, like, in their dark, smoky room, like, decide, okay, now's the time, let's roll all this out. I've got some thoughts, but it's a little more esoteric maybe, but I really want to see, like, maybe what your perspective is.
That's a great question. That's a very important question. Okay, so as far as I could work it out, I think that they had to fast forward a number of their agendas. Okay, so we have now this coronavirus pandemic, right? I think that agenda probably was intended to be launched either along with the World War or after, in the immediate aftermath, when people are traumatized and disoriented to the maximum, and then they go along with this. I think they had to push it forward because they couldn't get a war going. And like we talked a bit earlier, that the Russians, that the Chinese, and a number of other forces in the world, like Iranians, maybe Belarus, have understood the game, so they're not falling for the bait. They're not falling for the provocation that maybe 100 years ago would have triggered a wider war. So the last attempt orchestrated by British intelligence and diplomacy was the attempted invasion of Iran, which would have probably triggered a wider war between the West, the NATO, United States, and Iran. But that didn't work out because, I don't know if you remember, but they downed the U.S. drone. And then there was, the British actors were trying to flood the zone around Trump to kind of coerce him into launching an attack. And Trump said no. And then that's when Sir Kim Darroch, British ambassador, went berserk, fired off a bunch of cables, and then the Anonymous shortly thereafter leaked out. The interesting thing about that is that apparently, according to WikiLeaks, Anonymous is controlled by the FBI. So since it appears that Donald Trump managed to take over the FBI, then we know that probably it was Donald Trump and his people who caused the British agenda to be brought to light. And then Sir Kim Darroch had to it was quite a scandal. He had to resign from his position. This was kind of glossed over in the media, but this was a major event. Okay, so they didn't get a war. And we went then to this COVID-19 agenda, which is horrible, which is extremely dark. And why did they rush it? So that was your question, to go back to. So here's what started happening in September of last year. The repo market. I'll have to explain this because it seems like it's like a weird esoteric thing, but basically what happens that when banks in the United States close their books at the end of the day, they have to have a certain level of reserves with the federal in their accounts at the Federal Reserve. And then in September, something started going wrong. First, the interest rate on these. So the repos are repurchase agreements, right? And here's how it happens. So let's say, Scott, at the end of the day, you're short. You don't have enough money to cover your reserve requirements. And then you say, hey, Alex, can you loan me $100 million? And tomorrow morning I pay you back 101. So for me, it's like, $1 million overnight. Excellent. So, no problem. So this repo market was functioning almost on a routine basis. Banks were loaning each other funds overnight so that they could square their books, except that something went wrong in September and the interest rate jumped. It spiked quite high. I can't remember what it was, but maybe annualized 10%, maybe something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was 10.
It was 10. Okay, awesome. So that's what happened. And from that, so what does that tell you? That tells you that, I wouldn't lend you money overnight only, to make the easy $1 million overnight, only if I thought that you're bust and you're not going to be able to pay me back. So at that point I say, okay, Scott, look, I'll lend you $100 million, but you're going to have to pay me 105 tomorrow morning. How's that? And so it was obvious that something went terribly wrong. That is, the banks in the network realized that one or maybe more than one of them was basically finished, was bust. So there, the Federal Reserve had to jump in, and the Federal Reserve had to provide liquidity to cover these the lack of liquidity in the repo market. And so it started being like, I think $12 billion overnight, then 24, then 25, then it went to 100 billion overnight. I think we pretty much got to 1.5 trillion repo bailouts. And I think that they're planning to go up to $5 trillion in repo bailouts, which means that the financial system has run its course. It's actually falling apart. And now the only way to keep it together is to monetize more and more and more debt, to make all the bad debts that are on the books of these banks, to backstop them with the taxpayer money, which is not really taxpayer money. They're simply printing it out of thin air, but it eventually comes back to the taxpayer burden because it'll result in high levels of inflation, right? So instead of the establishment letting these banks and their zombie corporations fail, they will just keep printing money, bail them out, and they will let everybody else take the hit through inflation. So simply your savings, your pensions, whatever money you have is going to progressively lose purchasing power. And the objective of this game is simply to keep the governing structures intact through this crisis, but you can't do it with effective democracy, because people will say this is just not okay. The amounts of money that are being printed out of thin air are absolutely staggering. You know, like when they tell you so many trillions, 50 trillion, 20 trillion, 100 trillion, people get lost. It's like zeros. What the hell is this? But when you calculate the number per man, woman, and child in the United States, or per taxpayer, you realize that they just printed up something like $30,000 per man, woman, and child, and gave it to the banks and corporations.
Right.
Right. So you can't do that under a democratic system. There's going to be pushback. It's not going to work. So they have to bring in a totalitarian government. That's what they have to do. Well, we have the same problem in Europe. The same exact thing is going on. The ECB, European Central Bank, is doing the same thing. They're printing up money like there's no tomorrow. They're bailing out corporations and banks. Bank of Japan, all the major central banks, they're doing this in a coordinating manner, and this global totalitarian regime is meant to be rolled out everywhere across the world.
So did the COVID plan come first, though, and then this was actually an opportunity gained at the end of last year? I mean, look at all the CEOs that also left, and this COVID thing's been in the works for a while. So it seems to me like that became first, and this was an opportunity to use the new modern monetary theory or whatever to bring in the totalitarian.
Yeah, I think that was the intent, but I think that they had, I think that they were preparing it, but launching it like this, without a war, without a foreign enemy to hate and to close ranks behind the government to fight. You have opposition. Look at us. We're talking about this, right? You have a lot of people having a lot of opinion, and I think that the whole project has completely lost credibility. Practically nobody believes it anymore. I remember in March, I would say this whole thing is complete bullshit, and people would come back, oh, what, you want people to die, and stuff like that. Now I kind of look, and for newspapers, the official newspapers who still allow comments, or if they publish their articles on Facebook and then you see comments, it's virtually 100%. Nobody believes it. Like literally nobody believes it. So I don't know how you roll out a global totalitarian government when you don't have a really strong ideology. Communism in Russia came out. There was an ideology behind it. Here there's no ideology. There's just these elites that everybody hates. Like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and George Soros. They're pushing it. The media are lying to us, and everybody understands that they're lying to us. And so I think that they pushed it prematurely. Another reason why I think they pushed it prematurely is it seems that they meant to have all these chip technologies ready, you know. I think they intended to have the vaccines ready so that they would vaccinate you, give you your chip, and say, okay, now you can go around, but because your chip you're cleared to move around. They don't have the chips. They don't have these passports. They don't have. There's so many things that they are, I think, muddling through, inventing as they go along, and the whole thing is, I think, we're barely 6 months, 7 months into the agenda, and it's already kind of lost all credibility with virtually everybody. And it's extremely important for us to cooperate. And I think that they're losing this. So I'm very optimistic that the project will fail, but I'm also concerned because they will not go down without setting the world ablaze to get their way.
And everybody's still walking around with masks on. So
Yeah.
Well,
if people believe it or not, they're not standing up for themselves right now.
walking around,
Yeah,
I want to say this.
that's frustrating. That's very frustrating. But, you know, I think that we have to have no illusions that it's never going to be 100% of people who are going to be able to understand the truth and push for change. It's always going to be a certain percentage, 5, 10, 20%, I don't know what it is, but we shouldn't be discouraged. The other ones will catch up, you know, little by little, gradually.
So, just so everybody knows, the little town that I left last week, now that I'm in Iowa, they actually passed 5-2 that you need to wear a mask in your house if you have more than 10 people there. So, I'm not totally shocked by this, because one of the reasons I was leaving was not only did they have the signs up on Main Street, but they were contemplating making you wear masks outside, not only on Main Street, but throughout the town. But they took it a step further. And remember, this is the place that 1 out of 15 people tested positive. They didn't even test half the population, and there were 0 hospitalizations, let alone deaths. So there are no real metrics here. And
So,
two of the
Jason, if you live with a huge family, everybody in the family has to wear a mask.
if you can't stay 6 feet apart and there's 11 fucking people, Ricky, you betcha. But what it really is,
Wow.
I
is
saw your
there
show.
goes there goes
See,
your weekend orgies, right? You're gonna have to leave
look
one
at it this
out.
way. What they think they're doing is being slick with the students, right? Because all those students didn't leave. They all got apartments, Ricky. So now they got 3,000 kids that are in that place. They all want to have their Halloween parties. Well, the best they could do is when they busted a party of more than 10 people is $1,500 fine for the person that owned the home or rented the home. Now, if they've got 50 fucking people there, they got possibly $50,000 because it's $1,000 fine for not wearing your mask in my town now. It's absolute insanity. And if you look at the CDC's new numbers, 70.2% of those who got COVID when asked said they always wore a mask. 3.9% said they never wore one. So less than 4% of people that weren't wearing masks, according to the CDC, said they never wore a mask. Okay? And then 70+% said they did. That's how effective masks are. And I don't know if you guys have seen this yet. I couldn't believe it, but yes, an actual WHO representative, I loathe the World Health Organization, I'm not giving him any credence, I want to put that out there, but has now backflipped on lockdowns and condemned them. He says they need to stop the lockdowns.
Scared to go to prison. Crimes against humanity. I mean, let's be honest. And I saw your thing today, and then I turned on Cuomo, and he said that the metrics in New York are different than the rest of the country because he has a better team working on it. I swear, I just saw your show. I flick it off. I put it on, and Cuomo's sitting there saying, New York has developed their own tests and their own data, and we're going to go with New York's data because we don't trust the other data. And as we've discussed, he also is in cahoots with Gates and Schmidt. So, but he's literally saying on TV, our data is not the same as the federal data. Only New York data matters to New York. And I'm thinking, and he's going state by state saying how bad everyone else did but New York, and he means it. But
And Biden wants him. Did you hear, Mel, that Biden wants Cuomo?
As the AG,
Well,
as the Attorney
it's all
General.
big cities. This is all Agenda 2030. You know, I live 2 kilometers away. They have now they created a metro area around our city, Winnipeg, here in Manitoba, and I live 2 kilometers away from mandatory masks. It's just it's just insane. But it's all just coming. Here we had the conservative government putting in social, the Ministry of Social Development, No, sorry, sustainable development.
Yeah. Hey, John, you're for people who don't know, because you showed up late. You're friends with Tim, and I know you didn't really get a chance to introduce
Yeah,
yourself.
sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. Do you want to just let people know? Because I know Monica was actually asking me. She's like, "Hey, where's Tim?" And I'm like, "Actually, John's here for Tim. He's the
Yeah, I'm the better half of the Tim and John show that we currently have. I worked actually with Josh Sigurdsson, that probably most of you know. We started World Alternative Media about 4 years ago, so I worked with him for a very long time. Still do a little bit of videos with him. And then, of course, I worked with G. Edward Griffin on Freedom Force International on the council. We created the Red Pill Expo that currently was held in the greatest place that, this whole scam started at Jekyll Island. So I've been working with Ed since 2013. And then I've been writing a couple of books, trying to expose the whole scam. It's, the end of freedom, how our monetary system enslaves us. And then, of course, I had everybody in Canada. I was like, well, what's going on here in Canada? So I wrote a book actually in 2015 predicting the craziness. Like, Canada has gone full Venezuela, by the way. Like, we could talk about that for hours, but it's just insane what have happened here with the money printing scheme. So I kind of that's what I do. I'm a macroeconomics guy and monetary historian. I started with that in 2008, got interested in that and been doing it ever since. So, and you could find everything that I do on theeconomictruth.org. So that's all about me.
Awesome. Well,
hey, I have a question for Alex really, really fast. I think it's funny that we see this convergence of the banking, IMF, World Bank, and the fuckery that's going on with those people, and the COVID situation in, of all places, Belarus, where the president came forward and talked about how he was bribed with $1 billion by the IMF and World Bank to lock down his country, institute mask mandates, and do all that stuff. And he has said no. And now when I heard that, I thought, oh shit, this looks like this guy's exposing the scam. Like he's about to have a plane crash any day now. What do you know about that?
Essentially what you just said, but I thought that exactly gives it away. I published an article on my blog exactly about this because I think Lukashenko gave it away in saying this in public. So initially I just thought the news was weird. This was in June, and I thought it was weird that IMF would offer him $940 million and condition the loan on measures that would make it much less likely that they could ever repay the loan. Here's $1 billion, and we want you to destroy your economy.
And
that's IMF's business plan, by the way.
Right. Who took the money? If he's being honest, there's probably countries that took the money.
Exactly. So that's exactly it, because 85 countries, so what? They basically destroyed the global economy. So governments all around the world can't make their budget, their tax receipts are down, and so they have to ask for loans in order to be able to pay the bills. And so the IMF and World Bank come through, they give them the loans and say, but guess what? We want you to do this and this and this. We want you to really antagonize your people, make them wear masks, all these
That's slavery. That's slavery.
Confessions of an Economic Hitman. That's John Perkins' book.
Exactly. And so we know this thanks to Lukashenko, but all the other governments just simply took the money and forgot to tell the constituents what the conditionalities were. But that's who's pushing the agenda, obviously, because that's the only power that could persuade everybody to be so deeply entrenched in incoherence and madness and insist on it in spite of it making no sense and carry forward. The second wave, there's never been a second wave before of anything, right? Contagious come and dissipate. Now we have the second wave. Was there ever a second wave? No, but everybody is like, oh yeah, this is the second wave. Like, we know all about this. No foundations in science. It's all based on the PCR testing. Nobody's dying. I mean, the death rates are low.
Also, the guy in the beginning that tested the fruit that came back positive, was that Zimbabwe or somewhere?
It was Tanzania, I think.
He was another guy that I was like, okay, this guy's pulling him out.
He didn't make it though.
Yeah, they whacked him.
Well,
No. That was they whacked a different. There was another African country where they whacked the guy. Not the
Not the
Tanzania.
fruit testing guy.
Not the-
Zambia, Angola. That's a couple of terribly corrupt places.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, Mel, that you pointed out the other day was just that how it's compartmentalized and it's so like regional specific, like the destruction. Like over here, it's the wildfires because that's our industry, like agriculture and timber and stuff like that. And over in New York, it's hospitality and all that. So it's so diabolical.
yeah, I mean, they have people everywhere. It's like he's saying, like they have it, like when Trump said, and that's what we talked about on your show, you guys, is like when Trump said, the people that I'm fighting, nobody's ever heard of. These are what we're talking about, the people that finance both sides of all these wars and that are financing Antifa and Black Lives Matter and probably every other group. But it's all over the world. The problem is that right now the election in America isn't about America. It's not about this. It's really about, like, are we going to keep, fighting with an alliance to like root this, like, the virus are these bankers that have made us all in all of our own countries slaves to their debt. Like he's saying, they how many people took the bribe? So there's a huge brouhaha going on in Belarus or Azerbaijan and Armenia. Why are they picking these places? They're strategically picking them, these same people. So and I wish people understood that Biden is just a puppet. And Trump,
I think that's some of our frustration sometimes. I think people don't understand when you're deep into this. And Alex and I we're joking a while ago about how I'm like, we're constantly sharing the same things unknowingly. Like 2 seconds later, I'm like, hey, he shared the same thing I'm sharing. And it's just like when every single day there's more evidence and more evidence of more evidence, then when somebody seems like they're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're just like, it's hard to like not get a little frustrated and like not be like, what the hell are you reading? Like, what the hell are you watching? Like, there's like, I get it. Like, okay, maybe if there's just a couple pieces of evidence that like, okay, there could be fuckery here. Like, I get it. Like, oh, maybe you can accuse us of connecting dots that are a little further apart. But when there's so much evidence, to me, it's almost harder to. It takes more. Who's leaving? Somebody, Alex, are you leaving?
No.
I thought somebody was
Gry
waving.
America.
Oh, Gry America. Oh, sorry, guy. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I gotta go. See you guys.
Hey, thanks for joining us. And I almost feel like it's harder to believe the official story than it is the alternate stories, theories, because the official story is just like, how do you believe it when there's so much evidence proving that you can't believe the numbers, you can't believe statistics, you can't put your hope and faith in the tests being accurate. Like, so what evidence are you looking at to believe the official story? Because it's all wrong, so I think sometimes when and I think in future shows, I'm hoping to also get more people on who maybe have a different perspective. And Scott, actually, who joined us today, I got tons of positive feedback when I had him on last, because it was at the height of the lockdown, and we kind of differed in opinion on what was going on, and we had like a hour and a half, 2 hour show, whatever it may be, kind of just sharing ideas, challenging each other's ideas and thoughts or whatever. And a lot of people gave me positive feedback about the fact that it was just nice to see that people could have that discussion, and I just think it becomes, but in some cases I think it's very hard, because when somebody, like, I know Mel, you're like, well, you're on that side, or I think it's hard not to get emotional, because you feel like, okay, if you truly are down the middle, then let's critique both sides. Let's critique both sides and be open to it.
But there's an intolerance that I was reading. Also, I have a lot of negative feelings about, I'm with DiCaprio, or I'm in the Hollywood Hills. It's not so bad. But all I was saying was, I know some Proud Boys, and I know that Antifa is burning down and Black Lives Matter are destroying my area. So, for him to go so over the edge, I get it. But, I'm not going to act like.
But aren't there people on the other side too? There's also people who say that like nobody on the right is violent, and the thing is,
I don't think that at all. No.
Well, there are people. There are people on the right who say that, like, oh, it's all, the other side. So I think there's extremists on both sides.
Well, live and learn. I learned never to tell anyone I think they're on a side. So,
I
at least,
think, yeah, but I think there's one critical difference organized by people like George Soros, So I think that there's quite a difference because they are not only inclined to be violent, they're being encouraged to be violent. And I think that there's a lot of these proud boys who are maybe a bit more genuine, maybe a bit more authentic, and they have no intention to be violent. And then if they,
But aren't there also a lot of people in the Black Lives Matter movement? And I know a few who I think are just misguided, but we can also say the same thing, that they're genuine. They honestly do feel like it's a cause worth fighting for or whatnot. They're not the ones, doing riots. I don't like calling them protests because I think we blurred the line between what's a riot and a protest. We're calling everything a protest when it's like, wait, when you're burning shit down, it's a riot. It's not a protest. But I do know people on the other side who truly believe, I think their heart's in the right place. They might be misguided, but their heart's in the right place. So I think, I guess I'm just making my point again, that that they're on both sides. There are people who honestly just believe in what they believe in. They don't want violence. They don't want to hurt anybody. And then there's also people completely extreme, and it's no different than a Christian who might blow up a birth control clinic because they're anti-abortion. They don't reflect all Christians, so.
Well, I think the difference is the organization and the money behind it, as opposed to, when there's violent people that show up somewhere, that's one thing. When there's violent people that got printed out, got emailed a 15-page document on how to, handle rioting and who to target and what to wear, and you can pick up your check at this Venmo account. It's a little different. I don't think that's going on with these. I don't know any white supremacists. I don't. I guess I'm lucky. I've lived in a city all my life, in Philly and in New York and LA. I don't know any. I also don't know any, gang people. I don't know these people, but I do know that some of them are organized. And when it's organized and it connects, and that there's flights and there's hotel rooms and there's food and there's a rule book and there's a playbook and people are bailing them out of jail, it's a little different. The guys that are protesting, the bikers or whatever, they call them Boogaloo Boys. I have no idea what that is. I don't. I keep hearing it. Proud Boys.
It was just a Tim Pool thing.
That's it.
So Mel, let me talk about some real white supremacists for a second, because I think they're kind of a joke, and they're never portrayed as a joke. Instead of being portrayed as a joke, they do try to lump them in with, whether it be the Proud Boys or militia. Even I heard Greg Palast talk about the supposed kidnapping of that governor, when you have the sheriff now saying that it may have just been a citizen's arrest and not a kidnapping plot. There's a lot more to unravel there, and I got to tell you, I'm not against citizens' arrests of governors that are making outlandish executive orders that are oppressing people. At what point do we decide to do that? But to harken back to the white supremacism thing, in 2017, when I started doing this again, literally the first day, when I went to Bilderberg 2017 in Chantilly, Virginia, I was approached by the now infamous crying Nazi. The person who was eventually portrayed as Charlottesville's ringleader on Vice and got caught, did jail time, cried all over the news, Chris Cantwell. Cantwell knew who I was because of Loose Change, obviously, and some of the things that I had done. Now, Cantwell had started as kind of like this libertarian, literally in his mom's basement, podcaster and, social media guy that started to get attention from the white nationalists, and then went full-blown white nationalism, anti-Semitism, the whole thing. I still talk to him. There was nothing violent about him. It was by putting a camera on him and saying, we're going to put this on Vice and this is going to be big, that you build this persona of somebody who was an intellectual liar and crybaby at the end of the day, who had no fucking power. I don't care if he had 100 people out there saying Jews will not replace us with tiki tortures. They are not organized. They're ignorant at best. Cantwell's push, for those that don't know, that put him over the edge into white supremacy is that his girlfriend slept with a black guy and it became extremely insecure. That's the reality of these fucking people. That's the joke they are. But the media's never going to tell you that. Okay? And they banned my interview with Cantwell from YouTube after that. It was like an hour long. You can kind of find it. I think it's in the Internet Archives or whatever. And he tried to bring up, the Jews run the media. And he said to me, he goes, and I go, well, what about Roger Ailes? Roger Ailes wasn't Jewish. And he's like, I'm pretty sure that he was. I'm like, no, actually Roger Ailes made some anti-Semitic comments. And then he also brought up Alex Jones. And for those that don't know, again, Alex Jones, I'm the first guy he ever gave a show to. I worked at InfoWars from 2008 to 2010. He produced several of my films. Alex Jones has no Jewish influence. I promise you. I watched him as he built that empire up. It was not because he had Jewish influence or was protected by Zionists. That doesn't mean that now that he's so pro-Trump and right-wing, and obviously Trump's policies align with Israel and Sheldon Adelson, that he no longer talks about Israel or the Gaza Strip, etc. But these false narratives get created. And then not only does the media push them, but then they push these supposed white nationalist monsters that are supposedly pushing the same thing. Anybody that spends 5 minutes looking into it can see past the facade, but most people don't.
Absolutely. And one of the most frustrating things is the fact that the establishment, whether it's the government or media, like they just absolutely refuse to acknowledge the what's going on in the streets. Like right here in Portland, man, like we have, I'm sure you guys have all heard the Antifa mayor. She's running for mayor of Portland, right? She says, I am Antifa, Sarah Iannori or whatever, however you pronounce her last name. And like on her website, she's got like this 10-point plan that she wants to do to address violence and right-wing violence, right? Number 9, it says, place flags at half-mast to honor all those who have been harmed by right-wing and police violence in Portland, and the flag should stay that way for a year to remind us of the justice we're fighting. Stuff like that. It's like it's just a complete reversal, putting it all on this side, but it's like absolute refusal to acknowledge that there is some sort of Antifa thing going on and just another person murdered just in Denver, right? Like, I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, really? Like, when can we just get back to reality and have this discussion? Like, I don't understand. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We lost us.
Hey, everybody still.
There it goes.
Yeah. No, I think it comes down to, like, I tried to start a political party here in our province, and I got attacked by both left, right, and center. Everybody was coming after us. We were vilified in the media. I was called an anti-government person because they caught up that I was at Freedom Force with Ed Griffin, and we had like probably 5 or 6 plans from different parties coming in and like posing that they were all for our platform, and then they turned against us right in media, right on live TV. They suddenly come out with a liberal platform, like totally against what we were talking about. So they all hate because they have a controlled group, left and right, that want to be in control, and they hate for any competition to come in to destroy the monopoly or duopoly, whatever you want to call it, that they created with the political system. You have that in all countries. Like they're trying to make it harder and harder in Norway, that I come from as well, to run opposing parties. I think the whole political system in itself, I think we're at the end game of everything, where we really the United States has been turning into like the end of the Roman Empire that we saw with a lot of senators, literally like murdering each other at the end because they totally had destroyed their currency and destroyed their whole nation. So I think that's where we're at. The United States is just one thing, the chaos that are there, but we have the same chaos in a lot of other countries. Here in Canada, there's like Trudeau is a total sellout to the UN Agenda 2030. Like we have basically our budget is the Agenda 2030 platform. So it just infuriates me that these guys are having this control grid that they created. We need to just destroy, and that's what my point that I made to Palestine at the Palestine start there was that there's such a massive amount of people that are not voting that have just disconnected from the system because they don't believe it anymore.
Alex, I know you got to go because it's 3 a.m.
Thank you all. It was a great pleasure. Honestly, I enjoyed this very much. I wish I could stay longer, but my day starts in a few hours. So I need to get some sleep.
You know, it's
Thank you,
funny. You have
Alex.
people who live in the U.S. who are like, "Oh, it's too late for me." So I hope they listen to this episode.
Thank you so much. I really needed to hear a voice of reason from outside of our country because people are fighting over the wrong thing.
Alex, can you tell people
Thank you.
how to
Thank you
connect
all.
with you? Because I'm sure some of these people might want to, maybe connect after the show. Do you let people know where they can get your blog and all your?
Yeah, so the blog is called The Naked Hedgie, which is like as a hedge fund manager, and then the naked, like naked chef. There was no naked hedges, so I thought may as well. And yeah, that's it. And I don't know,
You're on
maybe
Twitter.
give people my email address, the
Yeah,
Gmail.
after the show, I send everybody the links to the audio
brilliant.
video, and I'll
Okay.
put all your contact information so people can connect. So it's one of the best parts of this show is kind of throughout the 6 years I've been doing this, I've been able to meet so many interesting people. So to be able to share those interesting people like you, Alex, with a bunch of other people is one of the benefits of this. So
Brilliant. I love it. Thank you all. It was a great pleasure, and let's keep in touch.
thanks, Alex. Take care.
Bye. Good night.
Awesome.
Well,
He's still here. Yeah, so that's one of the benefits of doing this show is that and I love the fact that after these shows I see so many people jumping on each other's show and connecting. It's just it really is awesome to see that. But John, is Tim at the Red Pill Expo?
Yeah, he was at the Red Pill Expo, just actually ended today, and they ended up like, so there's a lot of people that were around me that were even in our Freedom Force Council that were doubting that Ed was going to have any success because of COVID, because of everything. You know what? It was 600 people turning out. We only had one Red Pill Expo that was even closed, and that was in Bozeman, Montana, our first one. I think there was thousands of people on the stream. So this was the right time. He had such a perfect timing on this. And, nobody was wearing a mask, of course, at the conference. And it was just a really good time. And Ed, of course, we're hanging out with Tim last night until 2 a.m. because Ed is a late night guy. He usually works till 3 a.m. on his need to know news and all that stuff. But he's up like drinking with the guys until like 2 a.m. And he's just a hardcore guy. Like he's 89 years old and he is like acting like he's literally my age. I'm in my late 30s now. So he is just full of, and this is just whole energization that he got from the conference. I'm going to call him in a couple of days when it's wound down, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be like a kid in the candy store, to be honest with you. Like this was like at Jekyll Island, all places that he got to have this. So this was like kind of the pinnacle of his total career. And, he's been in the alternative media for, many decades.
Yeah, he was. I had him on my show not too long ago, and I remember it was like the first time in a long time I was legitimately nervous because, and honestly, I saw him I was at the Red Pill Expo in Hartford last year, and I didn't have the balls to talk to him. I'm just like, I can't. I'm like, what am I gonna say to him? I'm like, so it was one of those things where it's funny how like when you watch somebody and their books, you see interviews with them, and you watch them for so long, you still kind of get that like nervousness every once in a while,
No, G.Edward Griffith's the
He's
man.
probably one of the most approachable people that I ever met. Sorry, Charlie.
yeah, I was on. We were on the same flight out of Mexico City to Acapulco, or to Acapulco for an Acapulco event, and so we had, we were there like an hour before our flight, and I just started talking to him, and he's the nicest guy, I mean. Then he went up on stage. I said, "What's your speech going to be about tomorrow?" He goes, "I don't even know. I haven't even really thought about it yet." And he went up there and he just destroyed. He just talked off the cuff for like an hour and a half. It was amazing. So he's a good dude that's been doing it for so long. And it's like you can give people like our parents' generation his book, Creature from Jekyll Island. Say, this is written by an older guy like you. Just read it and it'll open up their whole eyes. I mean, it might be too late for some people, but that book still holds up after a long time.
And I want to say he is a legit party goer. I want to say the last time I saw him was 2013 at a bar after a conference doing karaoke, and I was with Luke Radowski, Tatiana Moroz, and Josie Wales. And I remember he lasted at least as long as the rest of us because on the way up to back to the hotel, we caught the elevator together. And we just talked about what a great time we had. And it had to be 2 or 3 in the morning. So, props to Gary Griffin. A great guy all around. I got to bounce. I got 2 little girls upstairs I got to take care of. Ricky, thank you again, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So thanks for being with us. I appreciate it. We'll definitely keep everybody in touch with the next one. Yeah, hopefully we'll have to get Mr. Griffin on one of these shows.